2011, we brought it back to the Bright Ridge Club again. We had the Hall of Fame ceremony at night, Fanfest in the morning. I decided to expand it from 5 guests to 10 super ticket guests that year. So we had the Strike Force reunion. I brought Rick Martel back, this time with Tito, and because Rick had a great time. So he was very picky in who he worked for, and he really enjoyed the experience.
Yes, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, the best. Yes, these guys have class, of course.
So I was lucky enough to get Rick to come back. So he came back with Tito. We had Antonio Thomas and John Cena Sr. again. At this point, I didn't have as many contacts as I do now. So I would kind of recycle some of the names. We had Kenny Dykstra. We had Armando Estrada. Flew him in. He was fresh off of the WWE as a manager for Umaga. Who else do we have that year? Howard Finkel. I told you the story about Howard joining me at that dinner in New Jersey and asking if he could be a part of the FanFest and Hall of Fame. And so this was his first time working for me. So Howard Finkel was a super ticket guest and then hosted the Hall of Fame later on in the night. And Chief Jay Strongbow, which would have, it ended up being Chief Jay's final, not only final New England appearance, but final convention appearance. He passed away maybe a year later. I know he was a part of, he showed up at WrestleMania, the following year backstage visiting friends and stuff like that. That was his last public appearance. But, I can thank Howard Finkel for getting me that. I'll never forget that day. Howard calls me up at the house and says, Joe, I have a question for you. What are your thoughts on Chief Jay Strongbow? And the way Howard talked in real life is exactly what, how you see him on TV. And I was like, what did you have in mind, Howard? And he said, the chief is extremely picky in who he works for, but I would think that the chief should come home to New England and be a part of New England Fan Fest. And I said, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Chief isn't somebody that I had access to bringing in otherwise, because like you said, Chief was very picky in who he worked for. And, me on my own, I probably at that early stage of the Fan Fest, I don't think I would have been able to get him. So Howard hooked it up, called me back later on that day. Joe, Chief is in. And he was so excited. So Chief Jay was a super ticket guest, and we inducted Chief into the Hall of Fame later on that night. Howard inducted him. Howard inducted Tito. He also inducted Rick Martel that very same night. And we had Bob Backlund come out as a surprise. The public didn't know that Bob was going to be there. Bob wanted to come just for the Hall of Fame ceremony to speak during the ceremony on Tito, Martel, and Chief, because they were all friends of his while he was in the WWF. So it was just a cool moment because I knew it was going to happen, but nobody else, and it was a packed house. Nobody else knew it was coming. And Bob was sitting in his red pickup truck in the parking lot in the dark for like over an hour, just sitting there because he wanted to arrive early. He wanted to make sure he got there in time, and he didn't want anybody to see him. So when I realized that his speech was coming up next, I told Howard, I'm going to go run outside and get Bob. So I go up to Bob's truck, Bob walking with me back to the Bright Ridge Club. And Bob's like, how's everything going? Was it a good day? Was it a good day? I'm like, yeah, it was definitely a good day. We had a great fan fest, and Hall of Fame's going great. And he's like, all right, really happy to do this. Haven't seen the Chief in a long time. And that was pretty much our brief convo. We got to the door, and then Howard Finkel says, we have a special guest here. Unbeknownst to anybody, please welcome, I forgot how he put it, but he was like, oh no, please direct your attention to the back door. And everybody kind of turns around, and Bob Backlund walks out with his suspenders and all, and the place erupts. And, that was cool to be a part of. Definitely a cool experience for the fans. And ended up taking 2012 off because it is a lot of work. It takes a year or more sometimes to put on these things. And 2013 brought it back. and that was at the where was that? That was in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, and very cool setting. It was right on the water. Just kind of had like an old school vibe to it. I was at the Seaport Marina Hotel in Fairhaven, and we jam packed, I don't know, probably anywhere between 60 and 80 stars in that little facility. It was a nice facility and much larger than, you know, what we were doing at the Bright Ridge Club. So it was still much larger, but to cram that many people in there, that was a big one. And to this day, fans still tell me one of their favorite New England Fan Fest moments was going to Fairhaven. So the Fairhaven New England Fan Fest 3, that was a lot of people's favorites. You know, you had $1 Million Man with Virgil as vendors. You had super ticket guests like Powers of Pain, Warlord Barbarian together. You had Demolition there together, Axe and Smash. You had Typhoon, Jameson Winger. You had the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant. You had Paul Diamond as Max Moon, and he wore the original Max Moon costume. It was the only time he had ever done that at any convention before or after that. So it was a one and done. Gangrel was there, Adam Bomb, Savio Vega. It was a Men on a Mission reunion, Mo, Mabel, and Oscar. All three of them together. But I mean, it was a slew of vendor guests, and you had Joel Gertner there, and Bobby Lashley, and the Birdman Coco Beware, Hillbilly Jim, Godfather. He did Papa Shango later on in the day. You had D'Lo Brown, you had Rikishi, you had the Spirit Squad. For boxing fans, Vinny Paz was there, Pazmanian Devil. You know, you had Rob Van Dam there, and they had WWE had just announced that RVD was returning to pay-per-view just a week later, and you know, so that drew a lot of attention to have RVD be a part of it. He was there courtesy of Legends of the Ring. You had the Nitro Girls, Shay and Spice there. You had X-Pac. You had Bobby the Brain Heenan, Cowboy Bob Orton, Nikolai Volkov, Paul the Butcher Vachon, Chris Masters, Big Van Vader. I mean, it was a who's who. Like I said, there were 60 to 80, somewhere in that range, stars, all in that one facility. Tony Atlas was there. So definitely a cool day for the fans. And of course, ended it with the New England Hall of Fame ceremony later on that evening. And then fast forward, even after that, a late night comedy show in the same facility. And it was a stand-up Mick Foley comedy show. So that was pretty cool too. There was a Mick Foley meet and greet to go along with it. So it was a full-fledged, you know, there's a VIP dinner. First time I implemented that into the weekend for fans who bought VIP tickets, get to have dinner with some of the stars. So we had Taylor Hendricks and the Barbarian and Nikolai Volkov and Men on a Mission, all a part of the dinner. So definitely a cool experience. You know, got to thank Roger Chenard for being a part of that as far as like helping advertise the heck out of it. And, you know, Chris Sullivan from Lucky 13 Promotions for pointing out the venue to me because it was the first time we used that venue. And from there, we went on to 2014, which was the Crown Plaza in Warwick, Rhode Island. And huge, beautiful venue, biggest venue at that point that we had ran, and massive ballroom. Got to thank Renee Baghdad for being a part of that, really helping that go on. And that was a huge show as well. We had some rare appearances like Nicole Bass. You didn't see her a lot. And Scott Flash Norton. We had the Godwins. We had Clarence Mason, his first appearance in a long time and his only appearance in New England. I remember Eric Boulay brought in Dory Funk Jr., which is definitely a rare appearance. We expanded the VIP dinner. We made it bigger. It was like a full buffet. So we made that a little bit bigger. We added like a bunch of Q&As to the weekend, which made it special. We had a Q&A just for referees. It was called Reflection. And I had like Jimmy Corderas and Billy Silverman and Dangerous Danny Davis and Paul Richard. And that was hosted by Rich Palladino. So we had some cool stuff, and each year I just try to expand. So that was a lot of fun in Warwick. The following year, 2015, was the biggest one. It was at the Rhode Island Convention Center. I mean, just a massive, that's where Rhode Island Comic Con goes. Massive facility, beautiful facility. And that was a huge one. We had John Morrison and Molina. We had Eric Bischoff. We had James E. Cornette. We had Bill Goldberg. We had Jim Ross. We had Scott Hall. We had Lita. We had Howard Finkel, of course. He was there every year. We had Tony Atlas, Larry Zbyszko. We had Mean Gene Okerlund. Finally got to work with Mean Gene. And then for fans of the Divas, we had Shelly Martinez and Crystal Marshall and Jackie Gaeta Haas, Ryan Shamrock, Jasmine St. Clair. Lots of cool people there. Sabu and the Genie were there. Greg the Hammer, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, Oscar, Man on a Mission, Zeus, Tiny Lister. Just lots of cool faces, and expanded it even more. We did the entrance of the stars with Howard Finkel. We added that to the mix. So to open up the convention for the day, Howard would kind of introduce each star separately to their original entrance music, and kind of just added a little element for the fans that they really enjoyed. And then the Fan Fest all day, Hall of Fame again, that evening. Howard Finkel, of course, hosted that. And, some great memories coming out of that weekend as well. Took 2016 and 17 off, returned in 2018 for the Fan Fest. We went back to the Bright Ridge Club in East Providence, where it all started. And it was more of a small scale convention. There were mostly, merchandise vendors, but we also had Mario Mancini. We had Paul Roma. We had Cloudy of the Body Donnas, Jimmy Shoulders. We had James J. Dillon of the Horsemen. We had Dan the Beast Severn, Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, Marty Jannetty, Typhoon, former WWF announcer Sean Mooney in a really rare appearance, and another really rare appearance in Perry Saturn. And also Flying Fred Curry was there as well. So definitely a cool lineup. In 2018, like I said, a little smaller scale to the Hall of Fame at night. And then 2019, we returned to the Crown Plaza in Warwick. And that was a special one. We had the Horseman reunion. We didn't have Ric Flair, but we did have Arn Anderson and J.J. Dillon again, and Barry Windham, as well as Tully Blanchard. So that was a cool experience for the fans. We had Duke the Dumpster Drosy for more of the, gimmicky talent. People enjoyed seeing him. It was his first appearance in New England. Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant returned once again. Bushwhacker Luke. Whole slew of other talents. Demolition were there again. Also Rhythm and Blues, Greg the Hammer and the Honky Tonk Man together. And again, Q&As. We had the VIP dinner, did the whole thing. And then 2020 we had planned, but then coronavirus hit, so we canceled 2020. We took 2021 off, and 2022 I'm also taking off. So we'll be back at the Bright Ridge Club in East Providence in 2023, and we'll be inducting, the 2020 class, as well as some other faces as well, kind of added into it since we've had time off. And we'll do the Fan Fest, the Hall of Fame, probably do some Q&As. So I'm looking forward to it. And, it's been too long, so the fans are deserving of another one.
I'm sure they miss it, meeting all them stars. That Matt Bourne story sounds like the Born Again character. I don't know if you've ever seen it in ECW.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he kind of did that on some of the indies as well. So, yeah, it was pretty similar. It was kind of more of a darker look of, Doink the Clown, half Doink, half Matt. It's kind of a mixture. But Matt was, unfortunately, we lost Matt. But he was such a nice guy. He really just always spoke so highly of me. He kind of became a regular at the Fan Fest. He was there in 10. He was there in 11. He was there in 13. And it was always so nice to see him. He'd send me messages on Facebook just counting down the days till FanFest. Oh, 2 weeks away. You ready, Joe? He'd really get into it, and he was really excited to see all of his friends. And when he came in 13, unfortunately, he passed away 6 days later. So that was his last public appearance. Was New England FanFest 3. And I'll never forget, though, the night before, we're doing the VIP dinner and stuff, and I go outside after that's over with, and Matt Bourne's there. Matt puts his arm around me, and he's kind of just brings me in, and he's talking to a couple other people. I think it was like Larry Zabisco and I don't know, a few other people. I don't remember now, but he's just singing my praises to them, and he didn't have to do that, and he was just saying, all good things, and that meant a lot to me. And Matt is certainly missed. We ended up inducting him the following year into the Hall of Fame in 2014 when we went to the Crown Plaza in Warwick there, and his wife and his son came out for the induction. So that was a pretty cool experience for them to be there for that, to accept the award, to give a brief speech. Howard Finkel was the one who actually inducted Matt. And Jim the Anvil Neidhart was also inducted that year, in 2014. He got to be there in person. And the late British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, was inducted that year. And Diana Hart Smith came to induct him and accept the award in person. So it was a special year, a lot of cool stuff going on.
I always liked Matt Bourne. I thought he was a hell of a talent. I watched a lot of him, and him and Buzz Sawyer were an awesome tag team, man. They were like two pit bulls.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like he was underrated and sometimes underutilized early on in his career. Big Josh for WCW. I mean, they could have done more. He should have just been himself, honestly. But he was himself, Matt Bourne, at WrestleMania 1. And a lot of people don't even realize that he wrestled on the very first WrestleMania. So Vince and the WWF must have thought highly of him because they didn't just throw anybody on WrestleMania, So it was cool to see him be a part of that. And Doink the Clown, I mean, people joke about the new generation era because of all the weird and funny gimmicks. And, if you're an old school fan, maybe you don't like that as much. But Doink the Clown, the original Doink, was such an awesome character. If you look back at it, his promos, how, he played the evil clown. I mean, he did a fantastic job. And, even being dressed up as a clown, he had some great matches as Doink the Clown, whether it be with Bret Hart or, Mr. Perfect. There were a few really good ones that he had. So at least they still showcased, his talents throughout that time. But I remember going to a Melrose, Massachusetts show. It was Millennium Wrestling, and Matt Bourne wrestled on the show. And even in his elder years, this was probably 2012 or something. I mean, he did a flying whoopee cushion off the top rope. He was doing these elbows off the top where he would fly 3/4 across the ring, and they just connected. I mean, they looked fantastic. We were blown away, like, oh my God, this guy is, really giving it his all on a small scale show. So you could tell, still loved the business.
Yeah, well, he was around a long time because he was in Portland for a long time, world class. I mean, he did the territory system long before even the big Josh thing.
Right, exactly. And he was still involved with Portland Wrestling too, because I remember he mentioned that to me, that he was doing some stuff with Portland Wrestling. So this was probably 2013, and Piper was still involved, I guess, or still running it, or at least heavily involved in it, because he did mention Piper kind of steering the reins. But Matt was still involved.
Yeah, they made a couple comebacks. They had closed down and opened up a few times. And Piper always went back and helped. The guys in Portland always come back and help. The Grappler, Buddy Rose, they never forgot back there. That was a good territory.
Yeah. Playboy Buddy Rose, that's another person I met at that Wrestle Reunion Tampa convention. It was the first and only time I ever met him. Missing Link as well. He was another one.
Louis
I tried to-
Robertson.
Yeah. Missing Link was a nice guy, quiet guy. Playboy Buddy Rose, I was disappointed. You know, I kind of always wanted to meet him, and he could care less, it seemed. He just, you know, would rather have a conversation with who was sitting next to him, or, you know, he would just sign real quick and, hey, yeah. You know, he didn't want to be bothered. And I was kind of disappointed about that. But still got to meet the guy.
Back to the Hall of Fame. The first Hall of Fame I actually went to. That was the very first one you put on, and Ted DiBiase was there. You got any stories about Ted DiBiase?
Yeah, Ted's a good friend of Bobby Rydell. They did the ministry wrestling together, so that's why Ted came out and inducted Bobby into the 2009 when Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Ted, I mean, easily I would say one of the biggest stars in pro wrestling history. Without a doubt, one of the biggest heels. I mean, tough to top $1 million man, you know what I mean? And he played the character so well. And he had a great run, whether it be as a manager or wrestler or whatever it may be, $1 million corporation, and even a manager in the NWO. You know, he was able to elongate his career, did some commentating for the WWF as well. But yeah, Ted, I actually got 2010, I want to say, I got to be a part of a pretty cool event. It was either 2010 or 2011, and it was a This Is Your Life event for Ted DiBiase. And it was very private. I was invited by Bobby Rydell, and I don't know, it was in New York or New Jersey somewhere. I think it was in New Jersey. And drove up there with my buddy Steve, and there were probably, you know, 50 people. I mean, it was a very intimate This Is Your Life event. And Ted DiBiase didn't know anything about it. You know, it was a surprise to him what was going on. But they brought up the panel, and Ted was up there with his wife and his sons. And they ended up bringing out Virgil, and they brought out George the Animal Steele, who was a great friend of Ted's. They brought out Greg the Hammer Valentine. So a really unique night. It was a really cool experience. Sean Waltman was there also, ex-Pac, former member of the $1 Million Corporation. So everybody had stories, everybody shared, you know, different things. And Ted did a big speech and talked about his career, and they touched on all different moments, and then family moments, and the family spoke. And it was a really cool thing to be a part of. And I don't think it was even filmed, but you know, definitely a good memory.